Let's start by setting up a basic Next.js 14 project using AppRouter for server-side rendering. Here, we import AppRouter from Next.AppRouter and create a simple functional component, homepage. Inside homepage, we have a header and a paragraph to display our content. Finally, we wrap homepage with AppRouter in our app component. This setup is the foundation for leveraging the powerful features of SSR in Next.js 14, which we'll explore in detail throughout this tutorial. In this example, we're creating a user profile component that uses Next.js's useRouterHook to access the router object. From this object, we extract the userID parameter from the URL query. This component displays the user's profile based on the userID. In the getServerSide props function, we can fetch user data from a database or an API using the userID obtained from the context params. This data is then passed as props to our component, enabling server-side rendering of user-specific data. Here we're looking at a blog post component, where we fetch data using server-side rendering. First, we use Axios to make an API call inside the getServerSide props function. This function runs on the server each time the page is requested. We're fetching a specific blog post based on the ID from the URL, accessible through context params. The fetched post data is then passed as props to our component. This ensures that our blog post is rendered with the required data from the server, optimizing load times and SEO performance. In this snippet, we're demonstrating state hydration in a functional component. We're creating a component called timeDisplay that shows the current time. Initially, we set our time state to an empty string. Using the useEffectHook, we update this state with the current time once the component mounts. This is a classic example of hydrating state on the client side. When this component is rendered on the server, time will be an empty string, but once it loads on the client, it displays the current time, demonstrating the seamless transition between server and client rendering. Here, we're creating a simple navigation menu in a Next.js app. Using the link component from Next.link, we can navigate between different pages without a full page refresh, maintaining the single-page app experience. This example shows links to different blog posts. Each link component is pointing to a dynamic route, like posts 1. When these links are clicked, Next.js fetches and displays the content for that specific post, leveraging its file-based routing system for dynamic and efficient page rendering. In this example, we're building a user greeting component that fetches and displays user data. Initially, we set the user state to null, indicating no user data is loaded yet. Using the useEffectHook, we asynchronously fetch user data from our API user endpoint. Once the data is fetched, we update our user state. If the user data isn't loaded yet, we display a loading message. Otherwise, we greet the user by name. This pattern is common in handling asynchronous data fetching in functional components, showcasing effective state management and conditional rendering. Here we have a product page component that demonstrates the use of getStaticProps for static generation in Next.js. The useRouterHook is used to handle the loading state when the page is being pre-rendered. If the router is in fallback mode, it means the page is still loading, and we show a loading message. Once the data is fetched, we display the product details. This approach is especially useful for e-commerce sites where product details can be pre-rendered at build time for faster access and better SEO. In this segment, we're handling error scenarios in Next.js using a custom error component. When our application encounters an error, we display a user-friendly message. The custom error component takes a status code prop. If there's no status code, we default to a 500 error using Next.js's built-in error component. The getInitialProps function is used to determine the error status code, which can be from the server response or an error thrown during rendering. This approach ensures that users get informative feedback in case something goes wrong, enhancing the overall user experience. In optimizing SSR performance in Next.js, it's crucial to focus on head management. This example showcases the use of the head component from Next.head. By setting the title and meta description tags, we enhance SEO and improve the overall user experience. This approach ensures that our page is not only efficiently rendered on the server side but also optimized for search engines and social media platforms. It's a simple yet effective way to boost the performance and reach of your Next.js applications. In this example, we're integrating an external API to fetch real-time weather data in our Next.js app. We use Axios to make an API request to open WeatherMap in the getServerSide props function. This function fetches the weather data for London before the page is rendered. The data is then passed as props to the weather component, where it's displayed to the user. This demonstrates how Next.js's SSR can seamlessly integrate with external APIs, allowing for dynamic content generation based on real-time data, which is especially useful for applications requiring up-to-date information.